Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to continue our discussion about Jeffrey Epstein's death. But before we do that, I'd like to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to get all of our latest content. You know the drill, this is where I put everything. So in case it's not on YouTube, in case you don't follow on all those other places, because I'm not on Facebook, I'm not using Twitter, we're still on YouTube. But if you want to get it elsewhere, you need to come to our website, follow us on Minds, follow us on Steemit, follow us on Discord. Sign up to get our text list. I definitely recommend that. That's a good direct way to keep up to date. And then join our Patreon channel. For as little as $1 a month, you can support my work. And also, I recommend checking out the email newsletter, which I will be sending out weekly, once again, after kind of a long break on that. And finally, we are doing a monthly fundraising campaign. It'll be running the rest of August, trying to raise some funds to keep pushing the Conscious Resistance Network into the future, to add some more contributors, to get back to documentary films. And with your support, I can do that. So, yeah, thank you for that. All right, let's talk about it. Now, I got a few articles that I want to go over that relate to Jeffrey Epstein and his, what's being reported as a suicide. And we'll ask some more questions because, I put out this video the other day, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, here's what we know. And that was, of course, like within 2 hours or so of me waking up and hearing the news and then going out there and just reporting on it and just the basics of the fact without too much speculation and showing the picture of Jeffrey Epstein. And again, in that video, I said that I didn't want to get sucked into the speculation because I've seen every channel and apparently every individual out there from left to right is now a conspiracy theorist. And I mean that, jokingly, of course. I'm a conspiracy theorist, according to most people or a lot of people. I'm a conspiracy researcher, right? But now all of a sudden, everybody has suspicions that Epstein was murdered. These are the possibilities that we're hearing so far. For one, there's a crowd that says the death is fake. This is not Epstein. This is a fake picture or a fake body or body double or something along those lines, right? Epstein's already in Israel, already celebrating. Epstein's down in Palm Beach again, whatever. Who the hell knows? We don't know. That's what some are saying. The other is that his suicide was indeed not a suicide and it was a murder. And then you get into the theories of, well, who would the murderer be? Oh, it's the Clinton body count. Of course, you guys who are stuck and think that the Clintons are the top of the pyramid. I got a video coming out soon talking about like why your obsession with the Clintons is blinding you to other power players. And then there's the folks on the other side like, oh, well, don't forget Trump is connected to Epstein. This is the Trump body count. And there are some wiser folks, I would say, who are paying attention to the aforementioned intelligence connections that we've talked very deeply about here on this channel, that Epstein has connections to the Israeli Mossad and others around him may be connected to the Mossad and the CIA and intelligence agencies of that sort. So this could be an intelligence operation hit. We don't know, but these are the possibilities. The possibilities are that, yes, he did kill himself, and it's open and closed. It was just what we were told. He killed himself. The other possibility is that, of course, he was allowed to live and now he's gone into witness protection or he's somewhere else and this is a fake body double. And then the other possibility is that, yes, it was a murder and we have to ask who did it. So those are the things that we're hearing, right? And I didn't want to get into too much of that in the initial story, just wanted to get the news out there. And it's only been a few days and we're going to have to come back and revisit this over the coming weeks and months and years, I imagine. But we do have some more information to get into. So this is a op-ed piece written by Caitlin Johnstone, and it's republished on The Mind Unleashed. Jeffrey Epstein dies of suicide, what you're not being told. And it just gets into some basic facts. Okay, one of the major things I think is that CNN was reporting that Epstein was taken from New York Metropolitan Correctional Center at 3:30 a.m. Saturday in cardiac arrest and died at an area hospital. Sources tell CNN Jeffrey Epstein was taken from New York's Met Correctional Center at 3:30 a.m. Saturday in cardiac arrest and died at an area hospital. So this was reported at 9:05 a.m. saying that he had a cardiac arrest and died at an area hospital. Then a little while later, she tweets, the Federal Bureau of Prisons confirmed Epstein's death, saying he was found unresponsive in his cell at New York's Met Correctional Center around 6:30 a.m. So it went from being reported, and she says sources tell CNN at 3:30 a.m. She's saying this at 9 a.m. And then later it's updated and said it was actually 6:30 a.m. Was he found at 7:30 a.m. or was he taken at 3:30 a.m.? There are conflicting reports. Check out the sunglasses on the heads. 3:30 a.m. or 6:30 a.m.? What's the difference? Somebody says false flag. Way different news from earlier. It was said hung himself with his body discovered at around 7:30 a.m. This is clearly a cover-up. How could his body be discovered at 7:30 if he went to cardiac arrest at 3:30 a.m.? So lots of questions like that are already popping up. And you have journalists like Max Blumenthal. If Epstein's death is still under investigation and no one can explain yet how he killed himself, why is mainstream media reporting it definitively as a suicide? Even the FBI is calling it an apparent suicide. Federal authorities say the FBI is investigating the apparent suicide. So apparent suicide. So she's talking about these conflicting reports that, of course, at first we're given the Times, or the most popular report was the Times saying that he hung himself and his body was found at 7:30. And then there's also the kind of the issue that, and I don't know if she covers that in here, but I started to look into Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate that he had, right? When he had this first reported a suicide attempt a couple weeks ago, his cellmate is a former law enforcement officer, a cop who is a murderer also, who was caught, committing murders, and he's in this, supermax prison as well. And there was some suspicion as to whether he hurt Epstein, but then the report said that he actually saved Epstein from hurting himself. But when you start thinking about the potential of this not being a suicide and somebody being able to get to Epstein, I mean, if you already have a crooked, dirty cop who's known as a murderer, how hard would it be for somebody with a lot of money or influence to be able to get to that guy and pay him to do something? Now, I'm not trying to I don't have his name right in front of me, but just look it up. Look up Epstein's cellmate, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, of course, the other big thing is, why was Epstein taken off of Suicide Watch? That's the other thing we're hearing a lot, that people are asking questions about. Why was he taken off Suicide Watch? And the Suicide Watch, of course, the end of that Suicide Watch came only one day after, or at least, the death comes one day after these new documents started to get released. And this is one thing I want to say, though, is that the new documents that were released related to Epstein, which we have right here, we have all these depositions in the Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Giuffre trial, the lawsuit that's been going on the side that is related to Epstein, but indirectly. But honestly, for all the claims of bombshell documents released, for everybody who else has been involved in this and who's been paying attention, yes, there are several thousands of pages of documents, so there's still things to go through, and who knows what revelations might be in there. But from the initial reports of what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing the Daily Beast and other people report, honestly, this isn't anything groundbreaking. In bringing down Jeffrey Epstein, we pretty much already covered all this. There may be a few names in here that are being listed, but most of it's already previously known accusations about Prince Andrew. They do mention Clinton a couple times, and I saw, in fact, in some of the new documents that there's conflicting claims. So my point here with bringing all that up is to say that Epstein's death comes a day after these release of new documents, but the new documents also don't necessarily enlighten us anymore or tell us anything new. So despite them being blown up and people saying this could be related, maybe Epstein killed himself because the documents just came out and because he knew it was over. But honestly, everything that's in these documents has already been previously reported on, and the lawyers and others have acknowledged it. And we, like I said, we put it in our documentary Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't really think that it's that big of powerful stuff. But this is an interesting report. This came out July 30th, so about a week and a half ago. An attorney for 3 of Jeffrey Epstein's reported victims appears to not believe that the accused sex trafficker attempted suicide when he was recently found injured and nearly unconscious in his jail cell. This is after, of course, the first suicide attempt. Speaking out to The Sun, which is, of course, a British tabloid, Spencer Coven also suggests that the billionaire may have a hit out for his life. Now, I think I covered this in a previous video. It is, of course, The Sun, the tabloid, and he's saying that he could be murdered before his trial. We already knew this was a potentiality, and we've been discussing this, but this is what he reportedly told The Sun. I question whether or not it was a true suicide attempt. This is the first suicide attempt we're talking about, that Mr. Epstein was involved in jail, or whether or not there may be some powerful people who just don't want him to talk. If he goes on trial, everyone he's been in contact with will ultimately be fair game. There's no doubt in my mind that no jail will protect you when there's powerful people that want to reach you wherever you are. If he's going to implicate anyone in power that has the ability to reach in and somehow get to him, his life is definitely in jeopardy. I do question whether it was a true suicide attempt. I mean, how do you choke yourself? It doesn't make any sense. There are reports someone came after him, but that could just be because he's a pedophile. Those types of individuals don't last long in prison. If Epstein is in general population or anywhere available to the general population, I believe his life is in jeopardy. They will have to seal him down in the jail. But even then, there are still people who can get to him ultimately. So that was about a week and a half before Epstein died. That's from Spencer Guven, who's being reported as one of the lawyers for the victims of Epstein. And then this just happened right around the time of the death as well. And this is, again, just lots of interesting timing here that we're seeing. The lead prosecutor in Epstein's plea deal, who was the attorney down in Florida. Again, this is something we covered in the documentary. Marie Villafana, we talked about her in Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein. She's the lead U.S. prosecutor in Epstein plea deal, unexpectedly quit the Justice Department. And according to the government, they say that she had plans to do this long ago, that she has long planned to transition to a legal career in healthcare and now plans to join the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. So this isn't, according to them, anything weird or have anything to do with Epstein. This is just that she's changing careers. But it is interesting to note the time that this was reported the day before Epstein kills himself. Says that Marie Villafana, the lead federal prosecutor who helped negotiate the controversial plea deal for accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, has submitted her resignation to the Justice Department. Her, along with Alexander Acosta and other attorneys, helped make this deal happen. And again, we mentioned this in Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein. So her shocking departure comes amid a sprawling federal probe into the role she and other federal prosecutors, including Alexander Acosta, had in sidelining the 53-page indictment against the wealthy New York convicted pedophile. So she helped create this deal for Epstein, and the more you look into it, you can see that she actually helped give information to the lawyers and work with the lawyers secretly behind the victims' backs and lied to them and ignored them. And she should be held accountable. Well, now she's resigning as well from her post. So we'll see what happens. And then in this one, this last little article here is an opinion piece, and it's on CNN. And, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think this person has some good things to say. It's called The Puzzle Around Epstein's Suicide. And it is written by Paige Pate, or Pate, I don't know if you just say Pate or Pate or something, is a criminal defense and constitutional lawyer based in Atlanta, former adjunct professor of law at the University of Virginia, and a founding member of the Georgia Innocence Project. And so he calls this the puzzle around Epstein's death. And he doesn't get too conspiratorial, but he does acknowledge that there are questions. He says, for such a high-profile case involving Epstein and this network of people, the circumstances of his suicide at a corrections center raise serious questions. While it is unclear whether the injuries in the previous suicide attempts were the result of self-harm or assault, the incident should have convinced prison officials to remain on high alert, especially given the nature of the charges against Epstein. Sources told CNN that Epstein was initially placed on suicide watch after he sustained the neck injuries, but he was taken off and cleared by the end of the month and returned to the SHU, the Special Housing Unit, a place where inmates are sent to when they get into trouble, and that's where he's isolated 23 hours a day. Why was Epstein taken off suicide watch so soon? Why was he not monitored more closely in the SHU where he was held? And given the nature of the charges against him and other high-profile individuals whose names have been linked to this case, was this all a mistake or something more nefarious? I have represented dozens of people charged with sexual exploitations and similar crimes in federal court. For defendants facing these charges, it is common for suicide to be a major factor when a judge is considering the conditions of pretrial release or detention. And some of you may have noticed that former Deputy Attorney General, Prosecutor Rod Rosenstein, who I know is a shady dude himself, tweeted that detained pedophiles require special attention. But I think that this is, it's a fair thing to say that pedophiles might try to kill themselves when they know they're going to go into prison where they might get killed. The SHU is not a nice place to be. Inmates are typically isolated from the general population and locked in their cells for 23 hours a day with little contact with the outside world. And it says that the Bureau of Prison considers inmates held in the SHU to be potentially a greater risk of suicide. So once an inmate is on suicide watch, as Epstein was, he or she should not be returned to the SHU until the risk of suicide has passed or the crisis is over. The policy is directed toward inmates who are placed in the SHU for disciplinary reasons, but it would also seem to apply to an inmate like Epstein, who has been in the SHU to keep him protected from other inmates. It appears the crisis wasn't over. So he says for many years, I believe Epstein's suicide could have been prevented had prison officials followed the policies and protocols. So he's saying he does believe it's a suicide more than likely. He does mention, like, is it something nefarious? But, we don't really know. I think he says, while it is possible that something more nefarious was at play, I think it is much more likely that Epstein's suicide was the result of negligence and not some grand conspiracy. Who knows? We'll see. But it's just, we have to keep digging. Although none of the other individuals were charged, Epstein's co-conspirators, they remain potential targets if the investigation uncovers sufficient evidence to corroborate some of the allegations contained in court documents. Epstein decided not to take his chances with the jury. Perhaps the thought of a lifetime behind bars was simply too much for a man accustomed to private islands and a ridiculously lavish lifestyle. Perhaps he was overcome with guilt and remorse and decided that he didn't deserve to live. Whatever the reason, the investigation lives on. And I think that's the truth, that the investigation has to continue to live on. We have to continue to ask these questions. I do plan to make Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein Part 2, digging further into this. I'm going to reach out to the lawyers. I'm going to get some original interviews. We're not just going to be recapping what you already know and presenting it in a new fashion. We will be summarizing what has happened since we put out that documentary last year, the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, the new connections that we're aware of, deeper digging into that, and also reaching out to the lawyers and some of the victims if possible, so we can bring you the firsthand story. So please continue to support us on Patreon. Go to our fundraiser campaign in the video description below and help us stay afloat so that I can keep digging into cases like that. I told you I was going to be in New York for Epstein's case, and I would have been there if it was going to take place in 2020, but I'm not going to stop. I have Brad Edwards, the lawyer's number, who I've interviewed before on this channel. You guys have seen that. I'm going to reach out to him, try to get an updated interview. I'm going to try to get some of the victims who want to speak on camera and talk about this. So I'm not done investigating Epstein, as sick of it as I am, because honestly, you may have heard it in my last video, and that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Here's what we know. It makes me sad. It makes me really sad because, yeah, the truth is that these people do have a lot of control, and they could murder him if they wanted. They, whoever they are, this power, this pyramid of power and various interconnecting pieces of the puzzle that work against freedom and that care about slavery, and they're also involved in pedophilia. They're involved in trafficking. They're involved in various occult, hidden, ritualistic practices that are very different from what they parade themselves about in front of the camera and in front of the screen. All of this is going on, and Jeffrey Epstein is a part of it. He's a symptom of it, but he's only a piece of it. There are other people who are involved in this, and it just makes me sad and angry to think that, these people are going to still be out there, and that Epstein could be dead and either get away with it that way or potentially still be alive and escaping this somehow. Either way, it really disturbs me to think that we might not ever know the truth, and I think it's up to us to keep digging. So yes, I am sick of Jeffrey Epstein, but I'm going to keep digging, and I hope you'll support me. So until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.